In this video, I'm going to show you how to do a very simple weighted rating and ranking approach. This example is going to be very simplistic, but it helps you to understand what the concept is. I'd encourage you to open up the hamburger decision example spreadsheet up and follow along. Let's suppose that I'm going to decide to go out to lunch during work for lunch break. And in helping me to make my decision about where to go, I come up with a list of criteria that are important for me. And this is just an example of some of the things that might be important in deciding where to go. So one is the price, two is the flavor, three, freshness, whether or not it's cooked my way, how fast the service is, how close it is to my work, how clean the restaurant is, and how much fat there is in the meal. So what I would do is I would start by actually establishing a weight of relative importance for each of these criteria. Basically, that just means that, for instance, on a scale of 1 to 10 or 1 to 5, or in this case, 1 to 100, I'm establishing a relative importance for each of these. So this 70 that I put here means that price on a scale of 1 to 100 gets a weight of 70, meaning that that's how important it is. 100 would be absolutely, that this criteria is absolutely important to me. 0 means not important at all. 70 means, 70% important. Flavor, 90%. That means that's very important to me. Freshness, only 50%. Cooked my way, 30%. You get the idea. So down here at the bottom, fat content is not that important to me, let's say. So I only give it a weight of 10 out of 100. And the key here is that if price has a weight of 70 and fat content only has a weight of 10, then that means that price is 7 times more important to me than the fat content. So once I'm done establishing these weights of relative importance, then I actually go and look at my different options for where I can go out to eat, and I want to compare each of those options against these criteria. So let's say that I have 3 different options: McDonald's Big Mac, Burger King Whopper, Wendy's Single with Cheese. I go in and I give each hamburger, in this case, a score for each of the criteria shown. And this is really independent of what I had done on the weight of relative importance. So I'm just going to go ahead and hide that. So I go down the McDonald's column and I say, okay, price is on a scale of, we'll say 1 to 185, whereas the Whopper is only 65. In this case, this would mean that the Whopper is more expensive than the Big Mac because the Big Mac gets a higher score. Again, higher means better, and so if something is more expensive, it would get a lower score. Flavor, Big Mac's only 45 as opposed to an 85 on the Whopper, 70 on the Wendy's. If we go down here to distance from work, Big Mac gets a 90, Burger King only gets a 50, Wendy's gets an 80. This must mean that McDonald's is much closer to my work than Burger King. It got a score of 90 instead of a score of 50 for Burger King, which must have been further away. Now, I've simplified this by just giving rates for each of these 3 hamburgers for each category. In real life, it may not be easy to come up with the rate itself. So for instance, on price, what we may know is the price. The Big Mac may be $2.25, the Whopper may be $2.45, and the Wendy's may be $2.30, meaning $2.30. Well, if that's the case, then we have to figure out how to convert the price of the hamburger onto a scale of 1 to 100. And again, that can get tricky because the more expensive, the lower the actual score. So we got to figure out a way to do that, and I'll let you think about the best way to do that. On the flip side, let's see, fast service, what would be one? Fat content. Well, actually, that would be the same. I'm trying to think of one that would be a higher number is better. Well, let's say that we'll use a different example. the example of salary, instead of price, let's say that it is um, a salary for a job that we're selecting. Well, in that case, the higher the salary, the higher the score we'd want, so it'd be flipped. So we got to be careful that we're actually working those conversions correctly. The reason that we have to convert price on a scale of say 1 to 100 or 1 to 10 or whatever is because each of the scores for each criteria have to be on the same scale. So if we're using a scale of 1 to 100 for price, we also have to use the same scale for flavor, the same scale for fat content, restaurant cleanliness, and so forth. That's how the system works. So we got to make sure everything is on the same scale, and that may mean that we have to devise a system to convert the actual units of what we know about the criteria and the restaurant to the appropriate scale. So once we've done it in a way like this, then we actually do the weighted rating and ranking. And the way that we do this is, well, I'm just going to make a duplicate over here of these columns. I'm going to expand it so we can see it here. And then what I do is I'm going to unhide the weight, and I'm going to come over here to this column, and basically I want to take this equal to the score for Big Macs times the weight for Big Macs. Okay, and so this gives me a weighted score of 5950. And I'm going to go ahead and anchor the weight. I'm going to anchor the column on the weight so that I can drag this formula across, and it'll reference Burger King and then Wendy's, but the weight will always be the same because the weight ties to the criteria rather than the restaurant. So we got 5950. I'm going to go ahead and drag this across, and it gives me 4550 for the Whopper and 4900 for Wendy's. And then I'm going to drag it down, and notice that I have now weighted scores for each category and for each restaurant. Then what I do is I simply add up the weights, or the weighted scores, I mean. Here. And this is the answer that I'm looking for here. Basically, I look at the score that is the highest, and the one that is the highest would be the one that I would want to consider going to. So in this case, it's telling me that the Big Mac is the highest score, and therefore I'd probably want to go to McDonald's to get a Big Mac. Well, why would that be the case? Well, if I go back to my criteria, you can see that flavor is 90% weight, or a 90 weight, but Big Mac scores relatively low compared to the Whopper. So I was like, well, why would it have me go to McDonald's then? Well, if you look down here, we have a whole bunch of other weights, fast service, distance from work, and so forth, where the Big Mac scores really high, and the Whopper and the Wendy's single with cheese don't score as high. And so by the time you factor all of this in together, it's saying that overall, based on all of the criteria and all the weights, the Big Mac is the better choice. Now, just because this says this doesn't mean this is necessarily the decision that I would go with. I may change my mind and say, you know what, I'm really in the mind for a Whopper. I'd rather get a Whopper. It tastes better to me. Well, and that's okay, I can do that. But if that's the case, I probably have not accurately reflected my weights. If that's the case, then flavor, today at least, may be something more like on the scale of on the order of 100, and distance from work would be more like a 50 or a 40, and we'd give that a lower weight, and that would trickle through. So if we've done this correctly, it should give us a pretty accurate representation of what decision we would want to make. I hope this helps.